Welcome to our pre-season special episode of Breaking the Ice. I'm Jessica Shadian, President and CEO of Arctic 360, Canada's national Arctic think tank, and one of our Breaking the Ice co-hosts. Well, today we have a special pre-season episode with the Minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations, Rebecca Alty, to talk about the federal government's focus on the Arctic, from infrastructure to defense and everything in between. Minister Alty is a Northerner and a former mayor from Yellowknife, and she's the current MP from the Northwest Territories. We discuss what those experiences bring to her current role as minister, but most importantly, we talk about Prime Minister Carney's March 12th announcement on defending, building, and transforming the North. That announcement included the addition of several Arctic nation-building infrastructure projects, 2 of which are located in the Northwest Territories. We look at the significance of those announcements for the North, where we are, and what will be required to go from announcement to project completion. We end with takeaways on what this moment means for Northerners themselves and what the North means for Canada as an Arctic nation in a region central to the big issues driving global geopolitics today. Stay tuned for our upcoming summer 2026 season and the launch of a new Breaking the Ice series on the horizon. We hope you enjoy the discussion. Thank you so much, Minister Alty, for joining us today on our pre-season first episode of Breaking the Ice. Why don't we jump right into things? And I'll start with a general question in case anyone is not familiar. You know, you're the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. You're also a federal MP representing the Northwest Territories. You were born and raised in the Northwest Territories, so I would say you know the North inside and out more than most Canadians. So, you know, how does that expertise, being one of only 3 Northern MPs that covers 40% of Canada's landmass, coupled with your firsthand knowledge from being a Northerner yourself, contribute to your work?
So I think my lifetime of experience in the North and across the circumpolar world is really helpful for the government as more and more eyes are turning north. And I think a lot of folks are scratching their heads being like, what's up there? You and I have talked about it. It's more than snow and polar bears. It's this incredible ecosystem from the plants, animals, and wildlife, all the way to the incredible culture and humans and the incredible things that we're doing up there when it comes to modern treaty, co-management, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll pause there because there's so much to talk about when we talk about the North and the Arctic.
Yeah, but I think one important thing that you brought up is having that international perspective, because even though you have a domestic file, I would say for the most part, it's being able to see what is going on around the circumpolar North, to be able to kind of take in lessons learned there, positive and negative. It gives a whole different mind frame and perspective. And it's one thing that led us to actually create Arctic 360, having lived in the Nordic Arctic. And of course the weather and all these kind of things are different, but it's a different mindset in terms of it's just a northern extension of their southern parts of their countries. And so we have this weird kind of mentality that it's something difficult and impossible and it's far away and unattached, where it doesn't have to be that way. It's not inevitable.
Yeah, and Jessica, I think to your first question, you talked about there's 3 MPs, and I would just say there's 3 MPs for the territories, one for each territory, but really there's more. We've got a lot of MPs across the northern provinces or in Labrador, and even outside of that, to try to draw the similarities so that the North and the Arctic isn't foreign. I remember talking to the mayor of Calgary back in 2023 after our wildfire season. We were just talking about housing challenges and zoning reforms that we were doing, and she was like, wow, we face the same thing. And I'm like, yep, we all do. And so to try to make it as relatable as possible and not other us
or otherworldly or something completely different. We all have families. You want your kids to go to the same good schools and have good health care. It's just like any other part of Canada that way.
Yeah. And that's when I was talking to the mayor of Luleå in Sweden, and they were facing the same challenges. So being able to work across the circumpolar and the initiatives that they were working on to try to recruit people from Stockholm, because people are like, oh my God, living up in northern Sweden, I could never survive. And so same with Yellowknife. I'm like, you know, you've got your yoga class. We've got like amazing Ethiopian if you go to Zayabesha. But 2 seconds later, you can go out in nature. Yes. So there's, it's got that urban, rural, it's remote, and there's challenges, but there's challenges everywhere we go. And there's opportunities too, incredible
Absolutely.
opportunities.
I think that's the big part, right? That we want to pay more attention to in the North. And so speaking of that, okay, so the Prime Minister's office recently referred 2 nation building projects from your neck of the woods, among a few others, to the Major Projects Office. And so I want to talk about the Arctic Economic Security Corridor and also the Grays Bay Road and Port, which also includes an airstrip. Why don't we start with the basics? Can you give us an overview of the 2 projects? What are they? Who are the proponents? And maybe who is expected to own and maintain the project once it's completed?
Sure. So I'll move west to east and start with the Mackenzie Valley Highway. And first and foremost, if folks don't know, the Prime Minister was born in the Northwest Territories, spent his first 6 years there. And so it's been really helpful to have a prime minister who's from there. And so when he was growing up, he was like, wait, the Mackenzie Valley Highway, we were talking about that back then. You know, we've got to put this to bed. We've got to build this. It'll be an all-season road from Wrigley all the way up to the Dempster, which basically means we can get all the way up to the Arctic Ocean. And so there's a number of communities along the way. And with climate change, we've seen low water. We've seen ice roads that aren't... like it's a challenge to get the whole resupply. And so this is really important for communities, but then it's also opening up the Decho region and the mineral potential. And so there's been exploration, and I think of one company that's done extensive work, but it's been hard because of that base infrastructure. So it really opens up those economic opportunities, but also for the communities. And then when we move over east, we've got the Arctic Economic Security Corridor, or what we used to call the Slave Geological Province Highway, that would connect all the way up to the Grays Bay Port. So again, this is another all-season road leading up to the Arctic Ocean. So being able to have a port actually in Canada's Arctic will be huge. With climate change, the ocean up there is changing. So being able to move goods is going to become more and more common. So it is really looking at our current needs as well as those future and the opportunities that we can unlock. And so again, in that one, there's the mineral potential for both highways. There's also, of course, the military and being able to access our whole country. So making sure that we've got sovereignty, that we're able to be on the ground and protecting our North and our Arctic. There's important projects from a community perspective, as well as the economic perspective, as well as the safety, security, and sovereignty perspective.
Yeah. I think what's really unique, it's the first time the North is being taken seriously in a different light, is the proponents themselves. These are not Southern ideas about what we should be building in the North.
Yes, it's definitely the Indigenous governments through their Indigenous business development corporations that are really taking the lead on these projects, and so looking to be the proponents. There's still some governance work underway, but that's one of the models that's being looked at and pursued. We think of the Clecho all-season roads, the Clecho First Nation, Modern Treaty, and they did almost like a P3 model where they built and now maintain the road for the territorial government. So is that opportunity to look at for these highway developments.
Yeah.
And then on the Grays Bay port, the project's being led for years by the Kitikmeot Inuit Association, and now it's a major shareholder in the company. So again, being Inuit-led, Inuit drive to get this, I remember it's been at least 10 plus years back when I was a mayor and city councillor and coming to Ottawa and seeing the Kitikmeot Inuit leadership here in Ottawa, lobbying, advocating to build this. And so to be here in 2026 and see that project moving forward has been really, really important.
Federal backing. I assume that we can imagine then the proponents would likely be partially equity owners in these projects. And that's also something we're moving towards more and more. There's a way of impact benefit agreements to actually being equity owners.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is that we don't stop at the economic development opportunity as building. It's the next step. Now that we've got a highway, now that we've got a port, what does that unlock? And what are the opportunities? Mineral potential is huge. That's a lot of good paying jobs. But from that, we also know that there's more people in Yellowknife and the communities across the Northwest Territories and Nunavut with disposable income. So you want to step up and build that bakery with your amazing fresh croissants, you've got a market. And without those good paying jobs, it's a little harder to open up that bakery.
Absolutely. Sustained workforce, sustained economy, let's say. Okay, from practical levels, it's been announced that they're referred to the office So what's the very first next step?
So the work's already underway, and the work was underway before the Major Projects Office, but it is about adding that horsepower to get these projects across the finish line. And so being able to come in and work through the scheduling from today to ribbon cutting, what are the steps and how can we accelerate, what can be done concurrently. There's the financing aspect, and so what's needed, what are the different options. The federal government can't be the sole. And we have seen it already. We made the announcement in March, and we're seeing more equity come into these projects. And so being able to unlock the financing too when it comes to the federal government's commitment helps bring dollars to the table. So really working through the projects, finding the ways to accelerate, as well as that financing and the governing aspect, but being able to pull people together, because there's so many different, whether it's governments or industry working on this. So really being able to have somebody orchestrating it all.
Yes, and I guess that would be the project's office, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the two projects are Indigenous led, the proponents, Indigenous corporations, all the way to territorial government with the security corridor. Does the federal government have then to also ensure that there is more broadly adequate Northern Indigenous consultation throughout those projects?
Yeah, and so it is really working from the pre-engagement to the official consultation and then continuing through the projects. And so with the Mackenzie Valley Highway, there's been a lot of engagement over the years since the 60s. So that's also part of, major projects and the proponents coming together, as well as the Indigenous governments to say, what do we need? What information? Taking all that, the data that we have, and bringing it up to be 2026, remodeling X, Y, and Z. So being able to use technology as well so that we can accelerate this. But it is important that we do the consultation for these projects. But having Indigenous leadership at the table has been really beneficial in the scoping of the projects, the engagement with community, and then getting to that official capital C consultation part.
Yeah, right. I guess maybe just finding a balance between the government's responsibility in terms of consultation, but then also letting Indigenous governments and these kind of things also lead or help lead that process, working to figure out how to do it together.
Exactly, because the slave geological province has also been talked about since
100
I've
years.
been born. And so one of the big concerns that keeps coming up is caribou. And so it's really got to be governments and proponents and Indigenous governments together to find ways that we can mitigate it. And that's also the work underway. There are different routes that can be selected and different mechanisms. Talked to some people that were like, well, can the highway be closed from X period to X period? Right now, it's only open in the winter. It's only a winter road for 2 months. Can we not close the road for 1 month to respect X, Y, and Z? Or could we flip it on the head? We've got a highway that's open 10 months of the year instead of 2 months of the year. So it is through a community that we can find this is the problem and what are the ways that we can address it.
Yeah, okay. Focusing in on two questions. And by the way, I didn't think you're 100 because I said 100 years and you said since you've been born.
Yeah.
I just want to make it clear. I know you're not 100.
I'm Benjamin Button. Yeah.
Well, you look great for 100, let me tell you. Got all your noggin there. So sorry, I just want to make that clear. Okay, you were mentioning the structure of the federal financing. And this is what the project's office is pretty much tasked with. So if we take the all-season road to the slave geological province, hopefully connected then to Tidewater, and it's going to unlock this entire region of Canada's critical minerals potential. Then we've got the Grays Bay project with the port, airstrip, and the government has said, this is going to have dual use potential to support Canada's security and defense needs. So how is the Major Projects Office plan then to strategically coordinate with NRCan, DND to figure out what that structure of federal financing is? And I think on two ends, because part of this has to do with not just the federal financing structure, but how it brings in the private capital. So what is the business case? And then how is all that going to be coordinated to include Northern Indigenous participation in a way that we can make sure that they support this robust Northern economy, Northern jobs, the capacity, and security defense at the national end? It seems like a lot.
Yeah, and see, that's exactly for the major project, because it is a lot if you have all these different departments and nobody being the tip of the pyramid. And so having that one person that can call in, so there's an investment committee through the building Canada committee, the cabinet committee. So they have that opportunity to pull in the relevant departments. But the proponents do have to come forward with those business cases and show how this is going to work. So whether it's a port, whether it's going to be a toll highway, whether it's going to be one of the mines, there's been a variety of different projects that have been referred. Calumet Hydro was another one. And so being able to see what can be supported through the private equity and where the government could come in and what are the public good and the reason that the government should come in on that project. So having the major projects office does have that one lead that can pull everybody together and be the conduit between, so that the proponent isn't running it around Ottawa talking to 12 different people. They talk to the major projects talks to the rest of the federal and the territorial family.
And so we've got the proponent, and they need to basically demonstrate a business case, which is probably a mixture of public-private. But let's say for what is the federal government's strategic aim in Arcan, particularly when it comes to critical minerals, how are they going to help support building a northern critical minerals economy, everything from infrastructure, which goes back to the project's office, but also, let's say, to processing and international linkages. And so I guess if you're the proponent, you work with the project's office, then are you supposed to present a full business case, or is it working with the project's office to try to get to that place?
You do have to have a pretty solid business case, but if there is that delta, this is what I can raise in equity, this is what I'm missing, and this is why I think the federal government should come in. And so when it comes to NRCan, well, actually, there's a variety of different federal funding, whether it's the Arctic Infrastructure Fund, the Canada Infrastructure Bank, NRCan's got a number of. So it is also helpful to kind of have that one person in the federal family too that is keeping an eye on all the different, like, have you tried this, and this? You do have to have a pretty solid business case because we're also looking for shovel ready in the near future. And so if you haven't done your business case, if you haven't started to engage with community and you're not quite ready for the major projects yet, and that's where a lot of these projects in the north have been discussed for a while. They know the community concerns and are working through them. They've explored the financing options. But we also know, especially when it comes to critical minerals, it's like, this is the market now. Like, we've got to move. And then once you add the Slave Geological Province, talking to a number of exploration areas that were like, that flips it. Our business case is better now. We'll be able to go to the market and get equity with this.
It's hard for any entity, the proponent or even just the project's office alone, to have all the answers. And so I guess to understand it's being organically built together and working towards that. Right?
Yeah, and the major projects office has there's a lot of people actually from private who have done, like Don Farrell, who have done these big, complicated major projects from the outside of government. So taking that lens in and now kind of working and figuring the federal family. But the other thing I would say with the major projects office is being able to really change government through the major projects office so that it's not a case of every project needs the major projects office. We've just improved government for others too. So that's also, I think, a big thing is learning how we can improve.
So maybe being more of a guide or kind of a leader.
And to be kind of like the champion in government, to be like, this is a sticking point. We've now tried to do 2 ports and X, Y, and Z is a challenge. Like, if we want to do more ports, we've got to change X, Y, and Z. So kind of being that iterative process too on how to build things in Canada.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So then that's to get these things off the ground. Going back to the security corridor, it's supposed to create 11,000 jobs during construction. So I don't know then if this is the project's office or if it's somewhere else in the federal government or if it's actually on the responsibility of the proponents. But what is the federal government's role and possibly plan to ensure that those government contracts will include northern companies to build the infrastructure and that really northerners themselves also are going to be adequately represented in that 11,000 expected jobs? Obviously not to fill all of them. It's going to take a lot folks. But
Yeah.
just to make sure it doesn't become a lot of all Southern workforce to the north and then going back south.
Yeah, the money
Yeah.
drain. And that's another thing the major projects office is looking at, like what's the current capacity in the north and what can be done without any government intervention, what's there today, and then what would be needed to ensure community readiness, the jobs and training aspect. So working with the territorial government as well as the federal government to see what those in-demand jobs are going to be and how can we create programs to address that. I was talking to somebody the other day, on the diamond mines, you don't need to have a government driver's license. You can get a site driver's license. So with the diamond mines closing, the opportunity to have those heavy equipment operators transition to these other projects. However, now we're into the public highways area. So how do we get folks to get their driver's license to make sure that they're able to transition from the diamond mines to these other major projects? So taking a look at also like that macro lens of what are the projects that are completing and what is the skills there that could then transition to these other ones. And of course, there's always going into the schools and explaining the opportunities. But for a lot of the construction jobs, there are opportunities to get folks trained up in time. While we're going through the permitting process, let's make sure that folks are getting that training to be able to build. Yeah. Getting those engineers is takes a bit longer, but it's still, those are those jobs to get into the high schools and start talking about so that they can come back and work on these future major projects.
Yeah. And do you see a connection maybe with then even like the technical or, the college education and I don't know, where there could be maybe apprenticeships or these type of things to help with all that knowledge coming to the north, let's say on the engineering side, how could that be transferred into the north to sustain?
And we have good examples of being able to train locally for the jobs. And, I think in the Mine Training Society, as well as a lot of the programs that have been put on by community. And so I know that communities are really thinking. I was talking to Grand Chief Lafferty and Chief Rubescazo this past weekend, and the community readiness that they're already looking at in the programs that they want to design to be able to be delivered in communities, so folks are ready to take on those projects at the Arctic Economic Security Corridor.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question for maybe a two-part, a bit of a wrap-up. First of all, I'd like to know and get a good sense, do you feel that the federal government and not just Northwest Territories, but I would say maybe the Territorial North together are in the same mind frame in terms of optimism and motivation and seriousness towards where we're headed? There's a lot of energy and focus right now going into some of these big projects. But I also want to ask you that personally as a Northerner, I mean, you're not 100, but you've been around for a bit of time. You see a lot of ebbs and flows in terms of attention to the North. And so how optimistic are you that Canada and Canadians at large will finally have this real long-term will, I would say, and dedication to stay on course, focused on the North to build all the social and economic and defense infrastructure that Northerners need, but then really all of Canada requires as well?
For sure. Yeah, no, I think there's the ambition at the federal level, the territorial level, and the Indigenous governments level, and the municipal level, in talking to a lot of the mayors, of scaling up to make sure that they've got the water, the housing needed for the support. So I definitely think we've got the ambition. I think one of the challenges, of course, is that it is a lot. And so if we want to achieve this, we are going to have to rethink how we work and really taking a look at what technology can help. And I use the term AI, but whatever modeling that you want to be able to keep pace and to really take a look from the start to finish and what can be done concurrently. What is the must-dos versus we can do this afterwards? Because it is a lot, but it is about just challenging the way we work and stopping to think versus just autopilot. This is how we've always done it. And I think we do have to work together and recognize that we can't be in competition. I think that's sometimes one of the things that we get trapped in up north. And we can shoot ourselves in the foot. And there's a lot of opportunity, whether it comes from these three major projects in the Northwest Territories. Then you've got a Iqaluit Hardero, but we're also building housing. So there's more than enough love and pie to go around. So let's work together because our future depends on it. Let's seize this moment. And that's what I've heard in all my tours across the Northwest Territories over the past month is we're in, let's do this, and let's try to find ways that we can make sure that we can accelerate that work. Because it doesn't have to be less quality. Yeah. We can accelerate and still get good outcomes for the environment, for the people, and for the economy. It's just, we've really got to think smarter.
Yeah. No, I see that. And maybe because there's been a lot of difficulty for different pieces to talk to one another. So there's a lot of discoordination. And maybe if it's faster, it's because it's better coordinated. One of the things, I'm not trying to sell ourselves or anything, but we finally now have some federal funding for is putting together an infrastructure inventory, because we don't really have that comprehensive inventory of the major transportation, energy, telecommunications infrastructure that we do have. And then to eventually overlay all these different types of projects, office projects, so people can see what's out there. The different entities can decide what makes sense, what should be built first, what could be built together and be coordinated to give us, even Northerners themselves, a bigger vision. This is what we could be doing together instead of mine versus yours. And for the rest of Canada to understand how the North fits into the rest of Canada, to see, wow, this is what our North could look like.
Well, and I was talking to exploration company, and it's on the border of the Yukon and the Northwest Territories, but tungsten. And so looking at what tungsten's in, and it's in snowplows. And so I was like, every time you see a snowplow go down your street in Toronto, think a tungsten miner. And that's, hopefully soon, think a tungsten miner in the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. Yep. So there's so much in the North. It is beyond minerals. I think like the co-management, the Indigenous governance that we have is a model for the rest of Canada.
Yes,
so
yeah.
A lot that the rest of Canada can learn from the North.
And that's why having you, not just as a federal minister, but also as an MP in both, is such an important job, because you have that ability to help kind of bring that message to all of Canada and to Canadians who don't know much about the North. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, it's been fantastic knowing you for quite some time and seeing you make your way through up and over to different parts of the government and throughout Canada. And
thank you.
Canada and the North well.
Yeah.
So.
Woo!
Onward.
Thank you. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Have a
Take
great
care,
day.
everyone.
Yep. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.
Well, that's a wrap. We look forward to seeing you soon. The music here is produced by Tulakat, and we thank them for allowing us to share their music with our listeners. We really hope you'll check them out wherever you listen to your music. Also, follow Arctic 360 on social media at arctic360.org and your favorite streaming platforms to stay up to date on the latest podcast episodes and Arctic 360 content. See you soon.
Alle gerne vi engle til. Gæt at vi